I'm not calling for extreme behavior. No. We don't need extreme behavior. In considering the fact that today I have sent to the State Duma a new law on the prosecutorial body and a new law on the increase of responsibility for crime for violations of the law to be pursued by all organs and all top officials. This should have an effect. The Prosecutor General's office has enough rigidness and enough firm approaches so that the mafia structures should be shaken, so that they should feel that there will be no lenience for them here. Only this way, evidently, can we stop this wave of crime, violence, street crime. I simply had to come to you in this moment, and I bow my head before you as one of those guilty leaders who didn't undertake sufficient measures to fight with street crime, corruption, bribery, and crime. Apart from that, I would also like to say that I will support, and I did support, and will support Ostankino. I'm going to sign a decree which has already been prepared on certain changes. But all of this is to the benefit of Ostankino, toward its benefit. I understand how difficult it is for you today. We're all experiencing difficulty. And yet we must remember how, again, Vladislav Listyev labored and follow his example. I express condolences to the entire staff, to all of you, friends, close ones, and of course to the family. Of Vladislav Nikolaevich. Thank you, Boris Nikolaevich. We value very much what you have told us today about the fact as well that measures which you have mentioned will be undertaken, and they are just. And we also must all become penetrated with journalistic solidarity, so that we should not be in contention with each other, but to direct our words and our pens against those who are stubbornly attempting to turn our country backward. If you look at the chain of murders, they are all part of a definite wave. These are supporters of freedom, supporters of reform, supporters of our movement forward. These are supporters of that democratic structure which we have. And these are supporters of the president. Therefore, I wouldn't want to seek in advance who is guilty or to make certain loud accusations. This is a matter for other people. I want to say only one thing, that I feel in the final analysis this is a political murder. For me, Vlad, he meant a colleague with whom I had worked during broadcasting. We were together in the Young Communist Association, and then they invited me and recruited me into the program Point of View. This is many pages in my life. For me, he's a high-profile person, the number one person on our television, and also, apart from that, a friend. Regarding his death, for us, I think, we can't even express this as a tragedy or a loss. Words are all impotent in view of the occurrence. I think also that this forces us to think that we live in a criminal country, and unfortunately, Vlad won't be the last. This is all, for me, absolutely in connection with his new appointment. As a version of John Lennon, perhaps it should have then been done on a square and the shot should have come from a car. But I think here there can be no other versions. I don't even want to think now who did this or who organized it. I don't want to. I'm thinking that if we journalists are being shot at, that means we still have something to contribute to life, no matter how bitter this is or terrible, that our peers are departing, that such wonderful close friends are dying. Vlad was my friend, and nevertheless, I'm holding back my emotions because there was sufficient emotion on the screens today, and there still will be. I'm trying to understand where is that limit of the idleness of the authorities, which we seem to have. I read in newspapers candid statements of top militia who tell us that in their field of view they have 500 criminal groups. Why are you just sitting there? Or are you and they together? Each day, after yet another murder, the same old cliché appears. In the opinion of experts, this was the work of professionals. All right, they're professionals, but who are you? I don't know what to do. I have two sensations. Either normal people have to flee this country, or instead of paying taxes, we should find money, buy guns, and begin to shoot first. Then maybe we'll have more results. In Russia, laws were never functional. In truth, neither under the Tsar nor under Soviet rule. People lived in some sort of their own lives. The only thing that can help now is not laws or decrees of the president, but human morality can help. And each must do this by introspect and by examining what kind of society we live in. What kind of society is this when one can kill journalists, political figures, when weapons and force are the only methods, in essence, to resolve problems. Imagining this is a resolution, but in actual fact, this is just merely destruction of those problems. There was the same situation in Italy with the mafia. That's the Italian phenomenon, the alter force it meant initially. The anti-French Italian movement, at that time, it was Anti-Francesa Italiana. And yet, when a limit was experienced, experienced by society. The Italians said, no, we don't want to live in such a society. And now in Italy, there is an active movement against the mafia. For the mafia, the ground burns underfoot. The same situation should be created in Russia. I think this murder is among those murders which will never be solved. That's my opinion. This is probably finite for the people, but for those structures who continue to kill, this is not the last murder. Probably in any civilized, developed country, the heads of the law enforcement would view such a murder as a personal insult. It is a serious cause for them to reflect seriously on the posts that they occupy, about their abilities to measure up to this high post. The most devastating will be if the development of events in the country, and especially on television, will follow the scenario of those people who killed Vlad, who precisely calculated all of this, because as a rule the reaction of the other side is always emotional and spontaneous. But those who commit such monstrous crimes calculate everything from A to Z. The murder of Vlad Listьев is a challenge or summons to all of us. The Russian public board of directors of the public Russian television has described this murder as a challenge from the enormous raging mafia. We're convinced, it's emphasized in the statement of the board of directors, that this is a hired and, more than that, a political murder. The inspirers and organizers must know that there will be no mercy. The death of Vlad Listьев has overfilled the cup of patience of journalists. They intend to hold an action of protest, even to suspending publication of newspapers and not to broadcast programs of television and radio. Such proposals were discussed at the special meeting of the Club of Editors-in-Chief. Although this action is not difficult to organize, if not the circumstances, the silence of mass media could involuntarily make its contribution to intimidating the people. With a moment of silence, the Russian and foreign mass media employees honored the memory of Vlad Listьev, who came at midday to the Central House of Journalists. As was said by the chairman of the Union of Journalists, Vsevolod Bogdanov, such meetings are becoming a terrible tradition. Television, the press overall, is not protected from the battles between political parties, financial groups, for power and for money. Vlad could not have been any side in financial frictions. In my point of view, this was either revenge for his wanting to clear and clean himself of that dirt which has attached itself to the good and professional staff of the television company, or there is a type of even ritualistic, I have this feeling, of ritual, of organized crime, which demonstrates that in this country it can do everything. Probably this time confusion is being felt because the mind can't fathom. For what? One thing is clear, that it was not for what he was doing, but for what he evidently didn't want to do. Those speaking at the press conference made harsh statements against the essentially idle power and force structures. In the final analysis, the murder of Vladislav Listьев can be considered to be a political murder. It became a symbol of restitution over all people who think and care about the real reform of our society. In the yard of the Central House of Journalists, there is a monument to journalists who died during a period of great patriotic war. It seems that the time has come to declare a tender to erect a new monument to journalists who died during the era of reform. According to assertions of law enforcement organs included in the investigation on the murder of Vladislav Listьev, the best forces are involved, but it's clear now that it was not possible to solve the crime on the hot tracks. According to the Prosecutor General, there were several shots fired from different weapons by two people. Now composite drawings are being put together, which are to be shown on television. Citizens with any information to aid the investigation may telephone 231-1273. The prosecutor's office continues to be engaged in operations of an investigative nature and is expressing its first versions for the motives. Today at the session in the Prosecutor General's office, the first results of the work in the case of the murder of Vlad Listьев were announced. As the Deputy Prosecutor General, Oleg Gaidanov, told us, to solve this crime, hundreds of employees of investigative operational groups of special subdivisions were involved. What new facts does the investigation have at this hour? With a definite level of reliability, we have an idea about the murderers. First of all, these are young people between the ages of 26 to 30. A composite